Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca Virginia, and today I am sharing with you 20 of my absolute favorite Halloween DIYs that I have made over the years. Next week, I'm going to have a brand new video with 13 new Halloween DIYs for you, but while I am hard at work still on that video this week, I wanted to show you some of my faves from the past. So we're going to start off with this Raven DIY. Ravens just remind me of Edgar Allan Poe. I think this is really supposed to be more like a crow, but I'm calling it a raven. So this is a really easy DIY to do. I picked up the bird from the gardening section of the Dollar Tree, but I think they even have these out for Halloween. But if they don't have the black birds for Halloween, you could just get any color bird and spray paint it black. For this raven apothecary piece, I took a candlestick and one of the gold wire wreath forms from Dollar Tree and painted them both black. This one's a little harder to see, but I'm taking Spanish moss, which can be found in the gardening section of the Dollar Tree, and placing that where the candlestick and my wreath hoop meet. That is going to be our bird's nest. I think it's a crow, but I'm going with raven in my mind. I found these. They were 2 clip-on birds on a pack on one of the Dollar Tree end caps, and I placed him right in the center. Spooky dripping candle set. This reminds me of something from Phantom of the Opera. I could just kind of imagine it in the background there, and it's so easy. You're pretty much just going to be using a lot of trash for this. So over the last few weeks, I have collected toilet paper rolls and paper towel rolls, and I have cut them into all sorts of different sizes to make my faux candlesticks. Any kind of sizes you want. I cut some medium ones for the center of my candle set, some low ones, and then I had the tall paper towel rolls in the back. But you can create whatever kind of shape that you want. Again, I was looking for, a melted kind of candle stack, something you'd see in the catacombs with Phantom of the Opera. I don't know, maybe because we had the Paris Olympics. Phantom of the Opera was just in my mind for this one. And once you have hot glued everything together, you're going to start making the drippy effects for the candles. I went in with my hot glue gun, and it's really easy. I just put a bunch around the top circle part of our rolls, and just naturally the hot glue started to drip down them. Once that was fully dried, I went in with some painter's tape. I'm going to be filling these in with tea lights. So to make sure that the tea lights don't fall through and you can actually see them, that tape is going to act pretty much like a little basket the tea light can sit in. Then I took this outside and I spray painted it black. Highly recommend just using spray paint. It would take a very long time to actually paint every single one. And just so you could see the drippy parts of the candles a little bit better, I went in with a light gray paint just to really emphasize that. These black tea lights are from Amazon. I'll have them linked down below, and they fit perfectly into the slots of my rolls. I love this DIY. If you follow me on Instagram or have been watching me for a while, then you probably know I'm a pretty big Disney fan. Last year for my Halloween video, I made some poison apples that were very similar to the ones that you would see in Snow White. So for this one, I kind of wanted to make almost like the witch's hand when she is handing the apple to Snow White. So I saw something similar on Instagram and absolutely loved the idea, so I wanted to make my own. I grabbed one of the wood plaques from Dollar Tree and spray painted it black, and then hot glued down one of the skeleton hands also from the Dollar Tree. You could add some of the sticky command strips onto the back of this if you wanted to place it on a wall, but for me, since I am renting, I just had it leaning up and I added a little bit of the white creepy cloth to add that extra spooky evil witch effect. Next up is a little bit more on the cute side. We had some creepy DIYs, and I think these jack-o'-lantern lights are pretty darn cute, and they're also really easy to make. So Dollar Tree has these black candlesticks. I picked them up for a previous DIY where I made some bat candles. I'll have that linked up above. The Dollar Tree also sells these jack-o'-lantern tea light holders, so I'm going to be placing those on top of the candlesticks. But to add a little something extra, I wanted to make a skirt out of some of this Spiderweb's tulle. So you could go through with a needle and thread, create a basting stitch around the ends, and then pull it tight to create the ruching effect. But I just didn't want to get out my needle and thread, so you can do the same thing just by using hot glue and just bunching the fabric all the way around your candlestick. Then it was time to give the tulle skirt a little bit of a haircut, so I'm just taking my scissors and trimming it off. I want it to be more so like poking out than a long tulle skirt. And once I placed the jack-o'-lantern tea light holder on top, realized I wanted to cut it just a little bit more. This did get really messy because it's covered in glitter, which is kind of annoying. I saw in a couple comments on my last video, people said to spray it with hairspray. That keeps the glitter a little bit more holding onto the tulle. So I'll have to try that next time. I gave you a brief, cute DIY, and then we are back into the gothic, creepy Halloween DIYs with these skull bookends. I was looking at the Dollar Tree for actual bookends and couldn't find any. I could have sworn that they used to sell metal ones. I was going to attach that to the skull, but couldn't find them in this one, so I did have to improvise. I started off with one of these plastic skull heads. It was pretty hard to cut in half, so if you ever see the styrofoam skulls, I would recommend that for this DIY because it'll just be way easier to cut. But of course, when I was looking for the styrofoam skulls that I used in a DIY last year, I couldn't find them this year. So this is all that I could find. It was a little difficult to cut, but I still made do. Then I took some little bits of cardboard, I believe from an Amazon package, in a square shape, and I hot glued those to the bottom of the skulls before taking it outside and spray painting everything black. Those cardboard pieces are going to slide under the books and are going to be what helps to keep the skull halves staying upright when we place the books on them. Finally, to finish everything off and add a little bit of definition, I went in with some light gray paint. This way you were able to see all the different indentations and marks in the skulls, and it kind of made it pop a little bit more against the black backdrop. Black cats are a quintessential part of Halloween, but these ones are a little bit different because they are actually made out of pumpkins. This is a really cute DIY, and you're just going to need a few items from the Dollar Tree. So two things that I picked up from the Dollar Tree were the carvable pumpkins, and those are going to be the base, or more so the body, of the cats. So this one I picked up from Dollar Tree, and then this one I had in my craft stash. I picked it up about 2 years ago and just had never really used it, and I liked that it was foam underneath. So I'm going to be using that, but of course you better believe I'm going to be using that velvet for something else, and definitely going to be using the stem for something else too. So once you hot glue the smaller pumpkin on top of the larger pumpkin, you are going to want to paint it. I took these outside and gave them a nice coat of black spray paint. So next up, I cut out the ears for the cats and also the tails. So for this part, I am putting them on some kebab skewer sticks, and I just added a little bit of tape to the back of them before hot gluing because I wasn't sure where I exactly wanted the cat ears to be. But once I played around with it a little bit and I figured out how I wanted everything to be placed, then I went in with the hot glue just to make everything permanent, and of course so you wouldn't be seeing some bright blue paint on the back of those. And I did the exact same thing with the tails, so adding the bamboo skewer to the tail with just a little bit of tape, figuring out where exactly I want it to be, and then eventually I went back in, removed the blue tape, and hot glued it. My cats needed some bows, so this is one of my favorite ways to make a really quick and easy bow. You take a tail, which is just going to be a longer piece of ribbon, and then you'll take another piece of ribbon and make sure that it's a circle, pinch it in the center, and then I use a zip tie, but you could use jute, a pipe cleaner, really whatever you want to connect those two pieces together. I did have to use my teeth to tighten that zip tie, and then you can just fluff your bow and it is done. It's a really easy one, and then I added a little bit of hot glue. So I want to show you guys again just because this is one of my most done bows. So you're going to have your tail here, your second piece, you make a circle, cinch it in the center, fluff out the sides of the bow, and then to connect them, I did a zip tie, cut off the excess, and then hot glue that onto our cat. The zip tie didn't really bother me. You could barely see it at the center of the bow, but usually I'll do something to go over it if I don't do it with jute or another piece of ribbon. So I actually had these stickers from a sticker sheet from Dollar Tree. One was a black cat and one was a bat. So I thought it really went with the bows on them. And then the last step was just trimming off the excess. And now we have got two adorable pumpkin cats. This witch hat is definitely going to be on my door once it hits October. Right now I have my fall wreath up, but this is for sure going to be what I have on my door when all the trick-or-treaters come. It was super easy. I grabbed one of the witch forms from the Dollar Tree, took off all of that tinsel, and then I just wrapped it entirely with some jute. This jute I picked up from Walmart. If you've been watching me recently, you know I have been struggling to find the thin jute from Dollar Tree, but this thick one really worked well because I didn't have to use quite as much. Then to decorate the hat, I added some orange velvet ribbon that I picked up from Amazon. I'll have that link down below. I love the pop of color that it adds. I covered it with some twinkle lights, and it was super easy. I just tucked the pack into the back of our witch's hat. And then as a little last accessory, I did take a plastic spider and painted this with some silver and black paint. I know I mentioned it earlier in the video, but in my Halloween video from last year, I recreated the poison apples from Snow White, and I wanted to do poison apples again, but a little different this time. So I actually took the 2 apples from last year and coated them in some black spray paint. Then I went in with my hot glue gun, and similar to how I did the drippy candles in the first DIY, I just coated it with some hot glue and pretty much just let the hot glue slide down the apple how it wanted. Then for the sticks that are going into the poison candy apples, I used some of the kebab skewers from Dollar Tree. You get a whole bunch in a pack, and since the apples are foam, they stuck down really easily into our apple. Once the hot glue was completely dry, I went in with some white paint, just painting all around them. And I also picked up these Halloween sprinkles from Target. They were $1.99, and I actually had a coupon for $2 off my purchase, so I got it for free. That is some girl math right there. And then once all of that had dried and the sprinkles were good and set, I covered the wood skewers with some brown paint and then started accessorizing. I had some spider fabric from the Dollar Tree, so I cut that into strips and then tied that around the wood dowels in the apples. And then I cut our wood skewers down a little bit because they were a little bit too tall. And then I added on my poison labels. I'll link these ones down below if you want to use them. I just printed them out onto some thicker cardstock paper and then cut them, added a hole punch, and tied them to the wood dowels with a little bit of jute. Our next DIY is a creepy one, but is actually super simple to do, and you really only need 2 supplies, your skull and the candle. Again, I used the plastic skulls from Dollar Tree, but if you come across the foam skulls, I think those are a lot easier to work with. But again, I just couldn't find them in my stores. So I'm taking the plastic skull, and I did try my best to create a nice perfect circle at the top, but of course that didn't really work out super well because we are dealing with plastic. So once I cut out the hole at the top, I added on the hot glue, again dripping it all around so it looks like the candle that we're going to eventually be putting inside the top of the skull has been dripping down. And once the hot glue was dried, I took it outside and spray painted it with some white spray paint. Once that was dried, I brought it back inside, and it was time to start dirtying up our skull. I put a lot of brown paint into the crevices of the skull. You can't see it super well on the video, but basically the eyes, the nose, the teeth, and any of the indentations, I put some brown paint in and then wiped it off with a wet wipe. Before kind of creating my own stain, I used the wet wipe and the brown paint and went all over our skull to really dirty it up and emphasize where the candle is dripping out. And the final step was adding in a tea light candle. This DIY is a cute and pretty easy one. You need minimal supplies, the main one being a pair of socks. So I picked up these socks from the Dollar Tree, and I started off by cutting the foot section off and then turning it inside out so that the fuzzy material was showing. Next, I just started to stuff them. I picked up this fill from the Crafters Square section. If you see this in your stores, definitely pick it up. I think it's a really good deal to get this large bag for only $1.25. So after you have completed this step, there are a couple different ways to close off your ghost sock. Usually I go in with a clear elastic hair tie, but I am out of those right now. So for this one, I added a zip tie just to keep everything together. This did make it a little bit more circular than I wanted for my ghost. So for the second ghost, you'll see in a little bit that I actually just ended up sealing it with some hot glue. For the eyes, I picked up some vinyl from the Dollar Tree and cut out circles before placing those onto the socks. And lastly, for a added embellishment, I wanted some tags on our ghost. So I grabbed my burlap ribbon and just cut these into a square and frayed off the tops as well as the edges. Those are going to go on each of the sock ghosts. And originally I was going to either cut out a vinyl or try to write on the burlap, but then I remembered I had these stickers from Dollar Tree. So I grabbed one that said boo and one that said eek and placed those on top of our little burlap squares before hot gluing those onto our ghosts. When I saw this gold frame at Dollar Tree, I thought it looked very Haunted Mansion and knew I wanted to do a ghost vignette. This is a super easy DIY, but I absolutely love how it turned out. It is definitely giving me all of the Haunted Mansion vibes. So we're going to be going in with some gauze to really create a spooky ghost, but first I wanted to lay down a stencil, so I did cut a ghost out of some vinyl, and this is just going to basically be our template, almost like our coloring book image, and we're going to be coloring in our ghosts with some gauze to make it look extra spooky. So I did grab this gauze from the Dollar Tree and I'm just cutting it apart. I am removing the sides because you could really see the gauze bunching there, and I just started pulling it apart so it looked creepy like a ghost material, and then started adding it on top of our ghost vinyl stencil with some Mod Podge. And once I had completely filled that up, I wanted to add a little bit more texture, so I went in with baking powder and Mod Podge to create a little bit more of a drippy effect, and I did that mostly along the bottom of our ghost as well as the sides. To add a little bit more of a cute element to our ghost frame, I wanted the ghost to be holding a bouquet of flowers, so I picked these two out of a floral bunch that I had from the Dollar Tree. And originally I was going to just paint the eyes onto my ghost, but because of the gauze, it just wasn't coming out very nicely. So I ended up going back to the black vinyl and cutting 2 small black circles for the eyes. This next DIY is a skull art piece. It reminds me of something you would find in a spooky themed museum, and it was actually really easy to do. I saw something similar on Instagram and wanted to create my own using Dollar Tree supplies. I grabbed a bunch of the skulls from the Dollar Tree as well as a plain white canvas, and I started by organizing the skulls on the canvas to see how many I would be able to fit in each line. I originally taped out the blue around the edges because I thought I was going to spray paint this black, but I actually ended up deciding to spray paint it white. So kind of was a little bit pointless that I put down the tape, but I am going to use it for some gold accents. So I just taped out little parts on the sides and the top and bottom so that I could go in with my gold paint. This is a really gorgeous gold metallic paint from Folk Art, and I love the effect that it gives, so I added that to the sides and the top and bottom. Now that the skulls were spray painted with the white paint, I wanted to add in a little bit of a gold accent. So there were some veins on the top of the skulls as well as the eyes, nose, and teeth. So I went in with the gold metallic paint and then again just took a wet wipe to wipe off any of the excess. And for the skull that's going to be going in the center, I wanted that one to be completely gold metallic. So I went in with a smaller detail paintbrush to paint that one before hot gluing it down into the center to really be the focal point of this piece. A DIY, or really a makeover, that I've seen pretty much all over Pinterest, YouTube, Instagram is taking a painting and turning it into either a Halloween or an autumn one. I absolutely love this idea. I saw a lot of people go to their thrift stores and get these really big, gorgeous paintings. My thrift store did not have any of that stuff, or the stuff that it did have was way too expensive, but I did pick up this little canvas painting from the Dollar Tree. It looked like a New York City street way back in the day. Looked like maybe around a wintertime period since the trees were barren. And I decided this would be the perfect backdrop for my spooky painting. Instead of having empty trees, I added in red, yellow, and orange paint with a stippling brush as well as a sponge to create my fall leaves. And then I added a ghost on the street in one of the windows and right there on the sidewalk, as well as some little orange circles that I will soon be turning into pumpkins. And instead of creating bats with black paint, I thought that was going to be way too difficult to make tiny bats. I just went in with my Sharpie pen and started adding bats all the way around the top area of our city landscape. Once my ghost had dried, I went back in with my Sharpie marker to add in the ghost face, and also once my pumpkins were dried, I went back in with the Sharpie to add the faces of our jack-o'-lanterns. I was about to say this is another quick and easy DIY, but I'm gonna have to say that for every single DIY, so I need to come up with some different adjectives here. But this was a simple one. It looks a little complex with the spider's web, but it's actually not. I took one of the vases from Dollar Tree and painted that black. I didn't make it opaque or anything. I just wanted to get one layer down so it was a little bit easier when I went in with my hot glue. Next, I grabbed my chalk pen and I'm just drawing out what I want my spider web to be, kind of doing like all the different lines, almost looks like glasses cracked, and then you go in, put a circle on the inside and just start connecting your web. So I went around doing this. You don't need a chalk pen. You could use a pencil, marker, really whatever you want, because we're going to end up covering this with black paint, so you won't be able to see any of this writing anyway. Similar to how I did the candy apples I said candy apples, they definitely were not, they were poison apples. Don't listen to me, they were not candy apples. My poison apples in my latest Halloween video, I'll link that above if you want to check it out. I'm just going over everything that I have drawn out with the chalk over with hot glue and waiting until that is completely dry. Then once I made sure it was all dry, I went over it again with black paint. I like to add a little bit of Mod Podge to my black paint whenever I'm working with a glass surface. Sometimes it's hard for paint to go on glass, so just adding that Mod Podge really makes it stick and just adhere to everything a little bit better. To make the spider web stand out from the black background, I went in with this gray color. It's called Elephant by Waverly. It's one of my favorite dark grays. And I went in with a dry brush, just added a tiny bit. See, I got a little bit too much on there. And it just went over the spider web that kind of cast it a little bit more of a highlighted look to our vase. You could always fill this with flowers. If I had some black roses, that would have been perfect, but I didn't. So I just put a candle down in there and lit that. Okay, I might have spared you from saying quick and easy too much, but I will say that this was the easiest DIY in the entire video, but I think it's so cute and something that you can add to your regular home decor for the Halloween season. I have candlesticks up year-round on my fireplace, but for Halloween, I thought it'd be really fun to add little ghost faces onto them. It's a very subtle touch. If you're really not into the Halloween decor, I think this is a cute way to incorporate just a tiny bit of it. Someone might not even notice it at first glance, and then maybe when they're looking a little bit harder, they'll realize, oh, those candles have little ghost faces. I just use black paint. I don't light my candles, or if I do, it's only for a picture, a very short amount of time. These are really just for decor. So if this did drop down, it would probably ruin the ghost faces. But again, I'm just using this for decor, so just using some plain black paint works for me. I hadn't made a wreath for the Halloween season yet, so using some new supplies and something that I had from last year, I decided to put the two of them together to make this spider web wreath that I think will look great on my front door for the month of October. First off, I had this boo sign. It's a wood cutout that the Dollar Tree sells from last year, so I decided to use it again, but I painted it entirely with black paint. And then for the bee and for the exclamation point on the boo, I wanted to add this spider web fabric that I got at Dollar Tree. I love it. The only bad thing is it's super glittery and the glitter gets absolutely everywhere, which is frustrating, but it's really pretty, so I sucked it up and wanted to use it. So I adhered this down using some Mod Podge, and then I also, once I had everything laid down, put a little bit more Mod Podge over the top of it, and then I left this overnight. I did it later in the night, so I just left it until the next morning when I knew it would be completely dried. I absolutely love the way that it came out when it was dried. I used the glossy Mod Podge, so there was a nice sheen to it. And then with all of the excess fabric, I just grabbed my medium-sized scissors and cut all around so that we didn't have any of that excess. The only slightly hard part was getting in the spaces on the bee, but I was able to get those out too. So after I had finished all of that, cut off all the excess, I moved on to making the spiders. So the O's are going to be our spider's body. And first up, before I even started on the legs, I started hot gluing down the eyes. I got this big pack of googly eyes from Dollar Tree, so I just hot glued those onto the O's. I wanted to use black pipe cleaners for the spider's legs, but I didn't have any, so I went with red because I thought that kind of went with the, Halloween poison vibe. And I actually love how the red ended up looking since I placed the boo sign on top of the black spider web. And no, I did not paint the back of the boo sign because I'm putting this on my front door and I was scared that the black paint might rub off on my front door. So I left that blank, and then I just bended the pipe cleaners kind of like in a V form, or I guess an upside down check mark, to make the spider's legs and hot glued those on. So I really did like the red, but I wanted a little bit of black. I love distressing pretty much every DIY I do, so I figured I would distress the spider legs too. So to add a little bit of shading, I did add some black on to the top part of the spider legs. For this video, I tried to do DIYs that I haven't really ventured in before, so we have quite a few witch DIYs, some different accessories. We got spell books and hats and even a witch herself. So this was really fun to do. I've never done anything like it, and we're gonna start off with this DIY witch's hat, and it's from a pretty unlikely supply. It's an orange cone from the Dollar Tree. They come 2 in a pack. Also, if you didn't want to make a witch's hat, I think a candy corn would be really cute, but I already did that a little bit earlier in the season with a foam cone, so I didn't want to repeat any DIYs, but I'll make sure to pop that up on the screen. That would be another great DIY. I painted the bottom area and the top section of our cone with some black paint. The reason why I left the middle orange is because you're not going to see it anyway because I'm going to be covering it. If you don't have cardstock that's brown like me, some craft paper from the Dollar Tree would work great. I, of course, could not find any in my Dollar Tree when I needed it, so I went with this scrapbooking paper. And to give it that weathered look like it was a page torn out of a book, I did rip the edges and kind of made it look a little bit more weathered. I also made this Black Hat Society SVG. It was something that I already found in Cricut Design Space. I'll have the link down below if you're a Cricut user. If not, you can print something out and Mod Podge it on. And of course, because I want to make this look like it is distressed, I'm taking a slightly damp paper towel and some Antique by Waverly stain to just kind of dirty the whole thing up. The distressed edges were not enough for me, so please be very, very careful, but I did take a lighter to just burn the edges a little bit. It gave it more of that kind of scorched look, and I really love how it came out, but again, please be very, very careful if you are handling an open flame. Next, I hot glued my paper down into place, and there was one little section on the back where some orange cone was peeking through, so I went in with my paintbrush to cover that up just so you didn't have the bright orange kind of sneaking through in the back. Now to make the brim of our witch's hat. Originally, I planned to go in with a black witch's brim. The Dollar Tree has a similar tool to this, but it's black with spider webs that are sparkly silver. But I pulled it out and the sparkles were getting everywhere and I just could not handle all of the glitter. And also, I really like the purple. It's a good contrast. I think maybe if I did the black brim of the hat, it might have gotten lost. So I did 2 layers of this, one underneath and one on top. I just used hot glue, but I'm kind of scrunching the tool together accordion style. I was thinking like a ballerina tutu, so kind of pinching it all together, and I really like the look that that gave. Next, I went in with my scissors and just trimmed it down a little bit because it was a tiny bit too long. And the top layer I did make a little bit shorter just so we had a little bit of layering happening. Next, I went in with some ribbon. Originally, I was going to go all the way around the brim of the hat, but I really liked the look of just one big giant bow in the front, so I applied that down with some hot glue. I couldn't completely escape the glitter though. I did add a little bit of these black branches. The Dollar Tree sells them in black, orange, and I believe purple. They're glittery picks. So I did hot glue a little bit of that down to add a small bit of a glittery embellishment to our witch's hat. Now that we've got our witch's hat, it's time to introduce the witch. Not the one who's going to wear that hat because she's quite a bit tinier. I wanted to do a witch DIY, and this girl is entirely made out of book pages, minus her hair and the witch hat that she is wearing, but her arms, her head, and her body are made out of book pages. How cool is that? So what do you need? Well, of course, you're going to need a book that you don't care about. The outside area, so the cover and the back, you're going to peel off of the binding. I didn't show it here because you're going to see a little bit of my own editing magic in a second when I show you it completed. You're going to take your page, fold it down like I am into a triangle, take the bottom one and fold it, and then fold it over itself again. And you're going to do this for the entire book. I would suggest not too long of a book. This one was about 200 pages. I put on a TV show while I did this, and an hour later, this is what I had, the skirt or body area of my witch. I think it looks so cool, and it's so easy. It just does take a bit of time. Now for her cape, you're going to fold your piece of paper. I think you call it hot dog style and then hamburger style. Then you're going to go in with your scissors, and we're basically creating her cape right now. So you're going to make this shape to cut the cape, leaving it long on the one side because that's going to be the long billowing sleeves. Then on the ends, I just folded it back a little bit to be her cuffs, and then you fold it over itself. Then we've got to create her arms and her little hands. So you're going to take a piece of paper and fold it diagonally. So you're going to have this kind of asymmetrical shape here. And then just roll pretty much over and over, however thick you want her arms or hands to be. And then I used a bit of, I was going to say hot glue, but I did not for this one. I used a glue stick to just keep everything down. And all of that excess paper, don't worry about it. We're going to cut it off. So basically what you're left with is a straight line. But on the ends, you have that little diagonal piece of paper. So it kind of looks like hands. You could also just fold a piece of paper in half and make pretty much a straight line, and that would work too. But I like that her hands were the little diagonals. I thought it looked more like her hands are kind of being wrapped around underneath her cape. But if this is a little too complex for you, just cut a piece of paper and that could be your hands too. I did not use hot glue. I used the glue stick yet again to just keep everything adhered. So then what you're going to do is tuck this inside of her cape. Now you can kind of see how this is going to start to shape out. And again, make sure you have the cuffs. If you don't want cuffs, then you just wouldn't fold this section. I placed her arms/hands inside of this and then folded it over. And that is her cape with her hands sticking out. I also suggest adding a bit more hot glue on the inside. I did go back and add that, but I forgot to film it. Next, you can choose whatever color paint you want her cape to be. For me, I just went with a simple black. And while that was drying, I moved on to making our witch's head/face. So I saw this idea on Pinterest. There are tons of creators and so many different ways that people have done it. Most of them, though, I saw used a large wood bead or a very small kind of snowball, a styrofoam ball. I didn't have any of those, so I just made a paper ball. So I squished up a bunch of pieces of paper and took one of the book pages and placed that around my squished up ball of paper and tied it at the bottom with some jute, of course, cutting off that excess. These witches' hats come on black wood dowels. They're sold in a 3-pack at the Dollar Tree, and I went with this orange one for my witch's hat. My witch was pretty tall, so it's kind of hard to see it in frame, but I just used some hot glue to attach her head to her body. Also, completely off camera, you weren't able to see it, but I used Spanish moss, which you can find at the Dollar Tree, for my witch's hair. Last step is hot gluing on her cape. Put a little bit of hot glue on each side to keep everything in place. And there were a couple areas that I missed that a little bit of the book page was showing through, so I went in with a small detailing brush and just painted that area black. And finally, as an accessory, what is a witch without her broom? So I hot glued one in her hand. If Hocus Pocus has taught us anything, then we all know a witch is nothing without her trusty spell book. I've never made a spell book before. I looked through my old Halloween DIYs because it seemed to me like there was no way that I hadn't done it before, but I have not, so I'm very excited to bring you my first ever spellbook DIY. I'm of course going to have these printables linked down below. I got them from a blogger, so check it out down below so you can print them out yourself. To get the book to look like it has been worn and the pages are very well loved, I am taking a spray bottle with some water and just wetting down all of the corners of the pages, especially the sides, and I left that overnight to dry. The pages of the book I'm going to be covering up with our printable, so I cut that down to size, and to adhere it I used Mod Podge, and I like to use a paintbrush to apply my Mod Podge. However, in this case, since we were going for a very old, like centuries old spell book, I was not worried about wrinkles. In fact, I kind of wanted wrinkles. I thought the more the merrier, so I definitely liberally applied that Mod Podge down so the edges would get all crinkly, and the pages were looking way too new. You could have dipped these in some coffee beforehand, but I was going for the quicker route, so I just grabbed a damp cloth and some stain and put that all over. I also have some wax seals that I picked up from Temu, but I know Amazon sells them too, so I did place that down. It was originally gold, and I changed it to red so it looked a little bit more like a wax seal. And in the Dollar Tree toy section, kind of on the boys' side, I found a packet full of snakes and frogs and other creepy crawlies, so I painted that silver to go with our book. The next DIY, we are entering deep into the Gothic realm. This reminds me of something that you would see on the wall in the Haunted Mansion ride. And don't worry if this is too scary for you. I promise this is the scariest one that I have in the video. So we'll get back to the other ones in just a second. But if you like this kind of Gothic decor, then this DIY is for you, and it is seriously so easy. I took a picture frame from the Dollar Tree, and I also grabbed one of the Dollar Tree skulls and Dollar Tree hands. So easy, all you have to do, hot glue your skeleton skull on, hot glue the arms on, and you are halfway done. Yes, it's really that simple. Also, something funny, I picked up 2 right hands, so yes, my skeleton does have 2 right hands, but I think that's okay because maybe it's, someone else's right hand. Who knows? I then grabbed some pantyhose that I picked up from the Dollar Tree also, and that's what's going to give it that cool effect where it really looks like the skeleton is coming out of a painting or coming out of a wall. I placed the pantyhose 1 layer over, and then I flipped it on the back. I did remove the picture holder because that was getting in the way, and I wanted to hang this on my wall, so didn't need it anyway. And to keep everything all together and didn't have lines of pantyhose coming across, I just used zip ties to secure it in the back. You could also use hot glue, but pantyhose is so stretchy I would have had to use a lot of hot glue, so I just went with zip ties. For the leg sections of the pantyhose, I just double knotted that in the back and cut them off because we're going to be using one of the legs again. I decided to do 2 layers of the black pantyhose. I thought that gave a great look. It was opaque enough that you weren't able to see too much of the background, but you could still see the skull and the hands coming through. I zip tied that as well to the back. If you're going to have this on a mantle, then probably want to use black zip ties, but I'm just going to take down one of the pictures I have on my wall and replace it with this, so I didn't really care what the back looked like too much. And the final step, we want to make this look spooky and Gothic and creepy, and what better way to do that with some good old Dollar Tree cobwebs. So I took those out and draped them all across our picture. hope I didn't scare you all too much with that skull DIY, so I'm here to make it up to you with this really adorable, spooky, cute one. And it's so easy, and I guarantee you have most of the items sitting around your house. We're gonna make this ghost jar. I made the very viral tomato cage ghost last year. I'll pop up a picture of that. And this one's even easier. I took an empty pickle jar and filled it with my fairy lights. Then I went over it with some of this creepy cloth from the Dollar Tree and of course the white. And then I just cut out using some vinyl, 2 eyes and a mouth for our ghosty. I did put a little pumpkin in between what kind of looked like the ghost hands to mimic that very viral Pottery Barn pillow, if you guys have seen that. But my puppy decided that he wanted to eat the pumpkin, so he completely shredded it. So that's why it's not in the final images. But I love this DIY. It's so quick and easy. Next up, I love a good classic sign, a fun way to DIY a Dollar Tree sign that already exists. I picked this one up and I really liked the original colors, but I wanted to go over the words. So pretty much I followed the black, white, purple vibe and just repainted it using some Waverly paints that I had. Also, I created the Transylvania Salem Sleepy Hollow on Cricut Design Space. I will have a link to this image and any other Cricut images that I used down below. So if you use Cricut, that is all ready for you. On the Sleepy Hollow portion, I took one of the witch's brooms that the Dollar Tree sells in a 3-pack and hot glued that down to the bottom and also put on a black bow. The original broom was a little bit too long for the sign, so I used my trusty dog nail trimmers that you can pick up at the Dollar Tree to size down the witch's broom. If you're new here, I love all things Disney. Haunted Mansion is my favorite ride and theme, but I had to pay a little bit of homage to Snow White and the classic poison apple. Last year, I started noticing that in the Crafters Square section, there was a new brand, I think it is, called Farmer's Square, where you can get a lot of fake produce, which I love because these can get a little bit pricey at Hobby Lobby if you don't get them on a deal. So I got the classic red apple and I also picked up a green one. So I'm going to insert an image of what the apple looks like in a Snow White, and I'm pretty much just copying that. For the nose, I did an upside down heart, and the eyes are pretty self-explanatory. Then for where the poison will drip down to, I just did some squiggle lines. Yes, very scientific there. Squiggle lines all around the apple. Next part is super easy. You're going to heat up your glue gun, and everywhere that you already placed down with your black pen, I used a Sharpie, you're going to outline in the hot glue and let that dry. I thought this was going to be a lot more complex and I would have to completely cover the apple in the hot glue, but I think you get a great effect by just using the hot glue in the areas that you have outlined your poison apple face. For the green apple, I used what I kind of would think poison would look like. I know poison probably is clear, but for me it was black, so I did it completely in black paint. And then for our red apple, I'm going classic Snow White here and doing the green poison. I also added a little bit of shading, so on the black apple I did some dry brushing with gray paint to just give it a little bit of dimension. And then once my green paint had dried on the red apple, it wasn't quite neon enough, toxic enough to kind of match the color of the Snow White one. So I went over it in a little bit of a brighter green. Keeping with our gothic theme, we are going to create this skull mirror. This kind of reminded me of a DIY I made last year in my mega Halloween DIY video. I'll have that link down below, and in case you didn't catch it, I did a haunted mansion mirror, and I love using the mirrors from Dollar Tree. I think they can look really spooky and great for Halloween. I took one of the candlesticks, of course from Dollar Tree too, and I painted that completely black, as well as 3 of the little plastic skulls from the Dollar Tree. I also painted those black. To connect the mirror to the candlestick stand, I just placed down some hot glue. You're going to want to hold it in place until the glue is completely dry, just to make sure that it dries straight. Then I created my skulls. My first one, I had a larger plastic skull, and then two of the smaller skulls that I am putting off to the side were some white glittery styrofoam skulls, but I just painted those black. You can kind of see a little bit of the glitter coming through, but I actually liked that effect. I also made the frame a little bit more black with some paint. It's had a lot of gold in it, and I just wanted the gold to peek through. And then I also created a shattered mirror effect using some vinyl, but you could use a paint or even a Sharpie. This is another one of those quick and easy DIYs. If you don't have a lot of time on your hands, maybe you don't consider yourself too crafty, but you still want to get into that Halloween spirit. So we are going to be creating these spider cobweb candles. To do this, I am taking two different types of jars. This larger one is from the Dollar Tree, but the smaller one just contained a dessert from Costco. I am telling you, the Costco desserts that come in the glass jars, they are so great for crafting. But all you're gonna do is take some white yarn and wrap it all around the candle in no particular order or direction. We want it to look like a spider web, and you're just going to wrap that around and around. And then I was able to just tuck the yarn in the back, but if you can't, you can always hot glue it down into place. I could not find any of the black spider rings, only these reddish orange ones. So I just took some black paint to them to cover up their original red color. And then I just cut off the ring section before hot gluing them down onto my web. This is a great DIY to do with the kids because you don't have to use hot glue. You could just use some regular old liquid glue or even some tape. A gothic DIY video is nothing if we don't include a cool skull. This is an upgrade on a usual skull because ours had a very fancy former life and is covered in some gorgeous jewels. This is a really fun DIY to do, and it requires only a couple of supplies. So the first one are these large foam skull heads. I think these are really great. I've always seen them at the Dollar Tree, but didn't really know what I was going to do with them. But I really liked the idea, kind of a sugar skull. That's where I got some of the inspiration, but really wanted to bedazzle it up. To do this, I grabbed one of the sticker sheets from the Crafter Square section of the Dollar Tree. It has all of these adhesive rhinestones in different sizes, and the color of the rhinestones doesn't matter because we are going to be covering that up with paint. So I just grabbed a bunch of the rhinestones and started having fun just placing them all over the skull. Originally, you could see I had one of those larger stickers that I had used previously on the potion bottles, but I wanted to keep everything pretty consistent, so I just covered the entire skull with some of these little gemstones. Then I went in with black paint, being careful to stipple over the rhinestones. And then to finish it off, I grabbed some of that metallic silver paint I used on the crystal ball and highlighted the gems, the eyes, and even a little bit of our skull's teeth. Today, I had so much fun creating them, and I hope that they give you some inspiration to DIY some of your own Halloween crafts this season. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, keep searching, keep creating.